In my previous video, I talked about the overall starter set components, focusing on the characters. This time we're going to play the DM side. And as I mentioned in the first video, one of the neat things about this set is this starter set says, hey, take turns being the DM, and encourages players or participants to think about whether they want to be the DM or not, and to try it out and see what it's like to run the game. And the way it splits things up makes that pretty easy because there are 3 different booklets, one of which is this wilderness booklet you see right here. So you get to decide whether you want to run Wilderness or the Caves of Chaos or the Keep on the Borderlands versus playing. And it encourages you to do that kind of switching, which is really neat. Now, I'm going to do a few spoilers on here, especially the beginning of the Wilderness adventure. So if you are someone who wants to play this and are thinking you would be playing through the Wilderness booklet, then you don't want to watch this yet. You can come back and watch it later to see what I said. What we're going to focus on is in this booklet, and it is pretty neat. This booklet will accompany the map, which we get a really nice wilderness map. It's on the back side of the Keep of the Borderlands map. And the map has a variety of different areas on it, some of which aren't labeled, like, for example, this keep, so as to not distract the players. Also, you might recognize what that area might be, hint. But it, again, isn't labeled here deliberately on the player map. It is on the DM map inside the book, so that players will just focus on the neat things they can do. And what we are told is if we're a beginner DM, we can start with a fairly easy to run encounter that has lots of tips, and that's going to be this trail right here. So let's take a look at the book. The DM gets the more complete map, which has different labels. And we also get kind of what you might recognize as sort of the 5th edition style in terms of what box text looks like and different informational bits. It's a fairly standard look for 5th edition products. And what this does that's sort of nice is it gives you, for the wilderness map, different regions, right? The trail, the fens, Tamarack Stand, this area up here of the woods. And you can see there's a table here that you could roll randomly or even ask your players, hey, where do you want to go? And actually the box text says, where do you want to go? And so you could decide that. But it says, hey, if you're starting out, then go ahead and suggest that they begin along the trail and begin with that, and then they can choose where they want to adventure within these wilderness areas, not the keep and not the caves. All right, so what the format then does is if we run the trail encounter, you see it's pretty clearly labeled here, Region 1 Trail, and we'll see some features that are there, some box text and introductory information, and then within this Region 1, there are encounters you can find, and you could roll randomly or you can go through them. And we get little information boxes, just like in the Player's Handbook and the DMG, that tell us how to run this and how to work with it. We can do them in the order we choose or roll. It does tell us you can roll or decide, which is good, kind of encourages you to think through that. And the first one is the Looted Wagon, which we are told is theater of the mind, so you just imagine it versus using a particular map that's given to us. And the Looted Wagon is a good example of just a fairly open-ended, short encounter, what might feel like a random encounter. It doesn't use those terms, but it is a wagon that stands on the trail ahead. A driver and horses are nowhere to be seen, and we can investigate it to see what has happened. This is going to set up later encounters. We get some different skill checks. Interestingly, it doesn't bother with actions, even though that is in the glossary. It just gives us different skills. We'll see other sections that do that as well. I appreciate this. It eats up a lot of space to try to write official language in 5th edition for 2024, where it tells us to take particular actions, search or study. That eats up some time. So this just lets us roll the checks and proceed on. And presumably, if you go on and use the Player's Handbook and the DMG, then you'll learn kind of what it means to take those actions in a little more detail and see that in other adventures, as we do in Dragon Delves or other more recent adventures. So the first one is really just about learning about that this wagon has been probably waylaid by somebody, and we find some treasure that's there. We are told as DM that, hey, bandits attacked it, so we know that. We also get to see the second encounter, Talkative Traveler, and this gives us an NPC card, and we can look at that right here. We've got our NPC card, pretty neat. So we get to show the players what she looks like, and on the back we get some information that helps us run Malin more easily. And this is information that is not in the adventure itself. So it's important to really use those cards, not just for the visuals and create that visual experience, but to help us role play it as DM. Here again, we get not actions, but actual charisma checks we can make. So we don't worry about the influence action or anything like that specifically, though it does mention attitudes here. We are just going to make these checks, and that's fine. So if we take a close look, it kind of tells us what our character does, right? DC 13 Charisma Deception, the character spins a grand yarn about a harrowing experience that never happened. I would prefer that it teach us to empower the player to say, okay, if you would like to deceive, if you want to make a deception check, tell me what tall tale you spin, right? If you make a performance check, tell me what kind of performance you do, right? If you do persuasion and so on. These are just examples, so it's not a big deal here. But again, it's getting into that idea that you, the DM, tell the player what they did, just as it's written, versus saying, you player, tell me. Yeah, not a big deal. It's just a minor thing. Again, we get these boxes on the side to help us. We are told as a reminder, if you see bold kind of name things like Malin, then we look up the NPC card and it's, tells us there as well. So Malin gives us she found a pouch on the trail. Again, just some minor information there. And that then leads us to the third encounter, or again, we can do it in any order, and the game trail, and we meet another NPC. This is Haldrick. Again, we've got some good information here. He's a local tavern keeper, and he is trying to do some hunting. So we can, help him or not after we sort of see him in the bushes and an elk runs away. But it helps us to get some information. Also, this is a recurring NPC in that we're going to meet them when we go to the keep on the Borderlands. Cool. I like that, right? Kind of builds that sort of rapport the players are going to have, like, oh yeah, we know Haldrick, we met him, that sort of thing. Shows the larger world and connective tissue between different encounter areas. Very cool. And he says, please keep my hunting spot a secret. And he gives him some gold for doing that to spend in his inn. That's important. So, right, so more connective tissue when they visit the keep. Awesome. Tells you about the keep. Really good stuff. I think that's nice little simple lessons that are there. And then we get to our combat encounter, which is the bandit ambush. And here we're going to use a map, the trail. We're going to use player character tokens, which we should already have out. And we're going to use the monster cards and tokens. And so you would pop out the card tokens and you'd look through and find that bandit NPC card or a monster card. And again, on the back, it's got all the stats. And so we would now, instead of the wilderness map, we use the trail map, which looks like this. Pretty sweet. So we're going to put we can put a wagon down on it if we want to have the wagon there. And it has a suggested start area on our DM map. And in this attack, we have more options than just combat. And that's made easier because the way this is presented, we have a bandit come out looking all handsome, dressed in this green and gold tunic, and basically says, hey, I'm your robber for the evening. Give me your money. And it gives us some guidance here as to how to run this NPC called Brawl and his bandit group, some of which are hidden, right? 3 are hidden nearby. And it helps us to adjust the difficulty, which is nice. And we get a box that tells us, hey, you could do social interaction, you could do active role playing, what that looks like, descriptive role playing, where you describe what your character does and so on. We can take that different approach both as DM and players. We get a little bit of example of different rules that you can do for advantage and disadvantage based on the situation that's set up here. Some information on avoiding a fight, because maybe we try to diffuse the situation, and here it does mention the influence action and gives us some ideas as to how this can take place. Pretty cool. And so you can see that if we do go to combat, Prowl reacts like, he doesn't actually necessarily want to fight, but he snaps his fingers and launches the ambush. And we've got where the tokens will begin. And Prowl, who has made himself visible, plus his other 3 bandits. And that's where we go to combat. We get some different information here on how to use the encounter maps, tokens, and so on. That you can possibly get magic items. It does tell us to, in fact, draw a card, which is kind of cool to see what you get. And we get information on combat as well, how to do it, describe the scene, place tokens, player react. So it really is, giving you a nice basic foundation for how to run this combat. I think it's pretty darn good, very useful. And we'll get other combats as well that can be through other different spots, which are neat. I'm not gonna, show you all those details. But you see that that's there. There are a number of different encounters in this wilderness setup. And that's just the wilderness booklet. Then you can have the Keep of the Borderlands and the Caves of Chaos are the other two booklets that expand that adventure. Another question I brought up was how it transitions you in terms of levels and the fact that after you're done with level 3, you'd need to make a character sheet. So I took a look at that. And interestingly, in Caves of Chaos, it does not actually at the end give you like an ending of what else to do, which I thought it would because that's the natural, like highest level area to explore. What I did notice though, actually, is that like the other encounters, the other booklets, which say, after this amount of play, advance a level. So there's no XP, it just advances you. Here it also does this, such as when you explore more than 2 caves or complete 2 caves or more than 3 caves. So it's another reason why you might want to start with the other areas is because you will level up fairly quickly in the Caves of Chaos and hit max level and then be done. And now the other encounters might be a little easy. So doing the other areas first lets you level up a little more naturally and then face the bigger, you'll already be level 3 when you face these dangers, but that's probably a good idea, I think. I would have to run through these to really know, although I will say that we ran the method encounter just fine in PAX play, and the characters were able to handle it. Now, in Keep on the Borderlands, it does have a little bit of information in terms of what to do next. And really, it's that there's a celebration event at the end, and it says, you can continue to adventure in the other booklets, but also, if you wish to advance these characters beyond level 3, you need the core rulebooks, the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster's Manual. But again, no transition. I would have liked to have seen, maybe it could be a good D&D Beyond article, something that says, okay, you, and even a video, you reached level 3 with your playmat. Now you've got to make a character. How do you do that? How do you replicate that? Which is interesting. So we'll see how that goes. If you are a new player who ends up using the going through this box set and reaching level 3, and then you have to make a level 4 character, let me know how your transition was, especially if you're a new player or saw new players go through that. I'd be very curious to hear how it went. This trail encounter, the ambush, and one of the lead-ups was run at Gen Con and then at PAX West as part of this sample. And it's great. There are just all these pictures on my phone of table after table having just a blast with this encounter. And so this may seem pretty simple as a setup. When you look at this kind of, you might think, well, that's not a lot that's there. But the reality is we ran a 30-minute demo just, largely off of this ambush and a slight piece of an earlier one. And that ate up an easy 30 minutes, right? And we did a single Caves of Chaos adventure using one of the Caves of Chaos map, and that took 90 minutes, right? So it gives you a feel for how you can actually get through a fair amount of play, right? One trail encounter and sort of the preamble, one Caves of Chaos, that'd be 2 hours of play right there. So there are a lot of hours of play here, in addition to the fact that, of course, you can make your own encounters with all these monster cards and NPCs and so on, and use all these neat maps to do that. So at PAX West, where I was present, I saw this be very fun for players. I think, as I said in my previous video, if you have some new players, or if you yourself are a new player or a new DM, this is an excellent set to get started with. Really fun, really worth it. I would recommend it. I have things I like and don't like about just about every starter set out there, but I think this is a really nice starter set, one of the better ones out there. Kudos to the team for making it. I hope you enjoyed this video, made possible by all of those wonderful supporters who helped me out on Patreon. Thank you, and I will see you all next time.